I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday of a holiday weekend. We're coming to you a little bit later, but there is a little bit of news. The NFL owners meetings were this week. Dennis, I was bummed the Lions pulled their proposal to seed the playoffs based on record, which I actually thought made a lot of sense, so that didn't go to a vote. But the tush-push vote was quite interesting, apparently very contentious back and forth. Some stuff made about Jeffrey Lurie's analogy that he used to the creation of the tush push. But in the end, 22 voted to ban it, 10 did not, which means it survives. So in my estimation, Dennis, there were 10 heroes in that room and 22 cowards. The tush push lives to push on.
I mean, what's the justification for banning it? I mean,
well, I said this before, like if they were moving to ban the entire situation where an offensive player assists another offensive player by pushing from behind, as we talked about, used to be the original rule. Okay. Right. But this seems to have been hyper-focused on one specific play. And how do you even necessarily quantify that play? Is it just at the goal line? Is it just that? There's a lot of questions. You have to feel good because both the Lions and the Browns were on the side of justice in this vote. I feel less good about the Broncos.
I do feel good. I would have been very disappointed if especially the Lions had been like, because for me, I look at it, I'm like, so what's next? You're going to say, well, this team, are they going to stop the RPO because Lamar Jackson is really good at it? You know, they're going to outlaw that. They're going to stop the forward pass because Patrick Mahomes completes 70% of his passes. I mean, let's get real here. They're going to stop the blitz because, you know, Pittsburgh gets to the quarterback with an uncanny knack. I mean, come on, be for real. It's a football play, and I would have been severely disappointed if. Now, what my concern is, it's going to come back.
The vote, yeah.
What direction do the numbers go? Does it now? Are there going to be 12? You know, is it going to be 14 or is it going to be 9? Is it going to actually only be 8 that vote against it and it'll get banned? Now, would I support changing the you can't push a player forward rule? Sure. To me, that makes sense. It's the way it used to be. But if you're gonna, you can't just it's like, oh, well, you can throw the ball 5 yards, but you can't throw it 20 yards. To me, that's the kind of sense that banning the tush push only was making. You either can't push people or you can push people.
Yeah. The other spot of news, a little bit of a bummer, Colts owner Jim Irsay passed away in his sleep. I know he has battled some health things in recent years, so didn't seem like a huge shock, but still a little bit of a bummer. There's been some mixed response sometimes online, but some very kind things said by Peyton Manning and some others who worked for and with him in the Colts organization. Never great for a team to lose an owner. You kind of got to wonder what exactly is going to transpire for the Colts.
Yeah, it's, you never, well, as a 60-year-old, it was a little disconcerting to hear about a 65-year-old taking a nap and not waking up.
So you're not
But
what I hear is there's not going to be any naps in your future this weekend.
yeah, I think I'm going to skip those. No, I mean, Irsay had a bit of a reputation as a wild man when he was younger. You know, he inherited the team from his dad, but he was notorious a little bit for partying. And as he got older, he kind of got his shit together, as we often do. But you know, he had I think it was Eric Edholm or a couple of the Stephen Holder, some writers that covered the Colts, and a couple of the things they said was like, look, outside of, there's a national perspective, but they said in Indianapolis that Jim Irsay was widely loved by Colts fans. They felt like he did the right thing by the team. He cared about the team. He cared about the community. And, that's what you want from an owner, is you want him to kind of do the right thing. Did he meddle a little bit? I think so. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But I mean, when you're spending that kind of money, I guess if I'm spending billions of dollars on a football team, I think I bought myself the right to have an opinion. But by and large, he did, let football people run the team, and he shared his opinions, and sometimes they mattered, and sometimes he let them think they didn't. But no, I think it'll be interesting to see what his daughter does with the team. She stepped in when he was suspended several years ago. She ran the team for, I don't know, a couple months. She was the face of the team. And it hopefully it spurs Anthony Richardson to, get good.
From your lips to God's ears. Well, we're going to continue and finish our look at NFC running back rooms, doing our unit grades. We looked at 16 through 9 on Monday. Was it Monday? Yeah, it was Monday. And now we are looking at the top 8. It has been a long week. Dennis, you and I have the same 8 teams, and we have the same top 5, it looks like. But we have a little bit of a different order on this first group. So your number 8, you have the Los Angeles Rams, and on their roster, they have Kyren Williams, Blake Corum, Jarquez Hunter, Ronnie Rivers, Cody Schrader, and Jordan Waters.
So they've got 3 guys. And, I love what Kyren Williams has done. He came in, he didn't have a great, combine leading up to the season. He got injured, missed his first season. But what we've seen in LA with the Rams is that Sean McVay likes to have a bell cow. And then when you break, he gets rid of you. It just is. Kyren Williams is 199-pound, 5'10", 4.6 yard or 4.6 second 40 running back. Good pass catcher, though the last couple seasons his pass catching role has been a little bit diminished. I like him. We think Blake Corum is the understudy, the heir apparent, and has a very similar skill set. Jarquez Hunter, he's kind of a dynasty darling right now, but he's a little bit less athletic, I think, than some of the dynasty analysts want to give him credit for. But we've seen them with that offense. They'll stick somebody in there and let them roll as long as they can do the things they need, like pick up the blitz and, fall forward. But to me, when I looked at the teams I have in front of them that you don't, I like the dynamics of their backs a little better. That they have, some more explosiveness in their backfields. I feel a little more depth, or the backups have shown the ability to perform at a higher level, I think, than Corum has at this point. And frankly, I could be very wrong about Blake Corum, just because he hasn't really had the opportunity to carry the ball a lot while he's been in LA, because of the way Sean McVay uses his running backs. But I like Kyren Williams a lot. I think he's a good back. I don't think he's long for the NFL because, it's hard to be a 200-pound bell cow. And he's been working like that for what? This is going into his 4th season now.
Yeah.
So, it's, the clock is ticking on that. The expiration date's approaching.
Yeah, and so my number 8, I went with the San Francisco 49ers, same division, but a different team. On their roster, they have Christian McCaffrey, Isaac Guerendo, Jordan James, the rookie, Patrick Taylor Jr., Israel Abanikanda, and Corey Kinner. We've long appreciated Kyle Shanahan's running game, and you always want a piece of that in fantasy. I really like Christian McCaffrey, but he has a checkered injury history. Last year was not great, was something of a lost year. Can he bounce back? He could. He's getting older. Last year wasn't the first time he's missed a huge, massive chunk of the season with injuries. Their whole offense, offensive line getting a little older, getting a little more chinks in the armor. And they, in years past, the depth and some of the performers they had behind them, those guys are gone now. Elijah Mitchell went to Kansas City. They traded Jordan Mason to the 49ers. I liked Isaac Guerendo fine as a rookie, and a couple of times we saw him, but I don't think he has a ton of experience. Jordan James is a rookie. There's some upside there, but kind of an unknown quantity. Patrick Taylor, kind of a role player. Izzy Abanikanda already washed out of being a role player with the Jets. To me, there were more questions behind McCaffrey, and I have more questions about McCaffrey than I did, a couple of years ago. So I still have them in the top half of the draw, but I felt more comfortable putting them there at 8. They are your number 7.
Yeah, for me, Christian McCaffrey is a much more explosive back than Kyren Williams. And I get it. He's missed 31 games in the last 4 years. Not great. And we could very well be looking at him playing halftime from here on out. But I do think that Isaac Guerendo provides, he ran a 4.38, 4.39 at the combine. He's a bigger back as well. He can carry the load. I like Jordan James a lot. He's a rookie, and that is a little bit disconcerting. But I do think that Guerendo and McCaffrey both are much more explosive than anybody on the Rams roster. And that's really what put it over for me. Would I have liked it if they had held on to Jordan Mason better? Yes. I'm not necessarily – I don't think Elijah Mitchell would have really moved the needle as much as, say, holding on to Mason, in part because Mitchell is very much like Kyren Williams. He's a little faster, but he's a 199-pound back that has experienced injuries in his short NFL career. I saw a blurb, I think it was on Roto World earlier this week, that there's talk Mitchell might not even make the Chiefs. I don't know that I believe that, but hey, it's May and we got to talk about something. The Rams' lack of explosiveness in their running game is what put them behind the 49ers for me.
So my number 7 was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and on their roster they have Bucky Irving going into his 2nd year, Rachaad White, who's going into his 4th year, contract year, Sean Tucker going into his 3rd year, DJ Williams going into his second year, and a college free agent in Josh Williams. I thought they were phenomenal last year. Bucky Irving had probably the most surprising rookie year. He went for 1,122 yards and 8 touchdowns, had 47 receptions, 51 receptions for Rachaad White. He had 613 yards. I think they're a great duo. We saw Tucker put up 308 yards on 50 carries when he got an opportunity. I think they have some depth. They're changing systems again this year. And, Bucky Irving had an amazing rookie year, kind of came out of nowhere. I think the first half of the year he was coming in to spell White and really caught people off guard. Can he repeat it? I would like to see it. I've seen some people have him like as high as dynasty running back 7 or 8. It makes me a little nervous to be up that high. I get the potential, but he was a 4th round draft pick last year that not a ton of us that we thought would be a contributor, but I don't think anyone saw what happened coming. And we've seen before guys who are 4th round picks come out and roll into a good situational opportunity and have an amazing rookie year and not repeat it. I remember when people were trying to tell me after his rookie year that Dameon Pierce was a top 15 dynasty running back. I remember when people thought Michael Carter had that kind of upside after a pretty special rookie year with the Jets. Let's see what happens. I think it's good. I think it's a good group. I think they have decent depth. It's a good group to have behind Baker, but I'm not ready to vault them up there just yet. But I saw you have them as your number 6.
I do. And so, you mentioned Michael Carter and who was the other back? Dameon Pierce. A couple things. You have to look at what's going on in the situation. So with Michael Carter, the situation was they drafted Breece Hall. That tells me something. He's with better draft capital than they did with Michael Carter. With Dameon Pierce, they changed offensive schemes, and the new scheme did not suit him. He's not a zone runner. He excels in man, and they switched to zone, and they brought in Joe Mixon, who excels in the zone running scheme. Tampa, they've changed offensive coordinators because Liam Cohen got promoted, but they didn't add anything to the running back room to speak of. Sean Tucker came in and showed if they need him to, he can be that running back 1. Rachaad White, he's a great passing back, receiving back. He showed that in college, came in. I think they tried to force him into a bell cow role, and what he showed was he's a fantastic pass receiver, not such a good runner. Well, he may be the biggest of the 3 backs there in Tampa. He's the tallest. I think Sean Tucker may outweigh him by a couple pounds. He's kind of short and compact. Their depth, Bucky Irving is a good pass receiver. If something happened to Rachaad White, they would be in good shape with Tucker and Irving. If something happened to Irving, they would be in good shape with White and Tucker. If something happened to Tucker, they're still in good shape with White and Irving. What's going to happen? They got this new offensive coordinator, Josh Grizzard. I don't even remember where he came from, if he was an internal promotion or not. But whoever I am, if I'm going into a new situation like that, and I'll mention it with Detroit. Part of the reason Dan Campbell said he chose John Morton as the offensive coordinator was to maintain a level of continuity in that offense. And so if Grizzard was an internal promotion, that would make sense. That says, hey, we want to keep, we see how this offense was running with Baker and Evans and Godwin and Irving and White. Let's keep that rolling and not change too much. I like the Buccaneer offense. And honestly, if Christian McCaffrey had not missed 31 games in the last 4 years, and wasn't going to be 30, I would probably have San Francisco ahead of them. But because of those things, I've got Tampa Bay up there.
And Grizzard was the passing game coordinator last year. My number 6, I have the Rams. As you mentioned, we have the same 3 teams, just in a different order. And I mean, Kyren Williams, since he became the starter the last 2 years, 2,443 rushing yards, 26 touchdowns, 66 receptions for 400 yards and 5 more touchdowns. I think he's been nothing short of impressive in that role. We've also talked many times about how the Rams draft a running back and you don't see them as a rookie, Kyren Williams included. With all that production he's had in the second and third year, he didn't do anything really as a rookie. So not seeing Blake Corum do anything last year doesn't put me off him. I still think he's going to be much more of a factor this year is where I'd expect him to step up, which is why, I agree with you, Jarquez Hunter being kind of that draft darling. I've seen people even go into the top half of the second round to grab him. I'm like, hey, I hope you're not expecting anything this year because the history of the Rams suggests otherwise. But I liked their room. I guess I like Kyren more than you, and I feel better about Kyren than you do is probably my hesitation about McCaffrey that had them down, because the Rams start for me a group of teams where I really like the lead back, even though it's fair to have questions about the backs behind them, especially since a couple of them have a number 2 currently that hasn't done a lot. That's the case with the Rams. So the 49ers probably would have been in that group, but I have more questions about McCaffrey. And Tampa Bay, I don't love Bucky Irving as the lead as much as I like some of the others. Going purely looking at dynasty rankings, I don't have him higher than the backs I have above him on this list.
So I'm in a startup, and Bucky Irving, a 10-team startup. Bucky Irving went as RB6.
I mean, there are true believers. I told you, I've seen people have him up pushing close to top 5, and maybe he will be there. Maybe I'm just a little more cautious than that about him and Chase Brown. I love Chase Brown. I loved what I saw from Chase Brown, but it was one year. And
right. So Bucky Irving is like the case for every dynasty analyst running back dream model. He comes in, he doesn't have, he's got mediocre draft capital, gets an opportunity. He's okay size. It's just like, this is your sleeper. This is the guy you want. He's your sleeper. He comes in and he performs. I like Irving. I do. He has a lot of, he's kind of like, so do you ever go look at Kent Lee Platt's relative athletic score stuff? So he's got this monstrous database going back years and years and years. And one of the functions he has on there is the RAS compare. So you can type in 2 players and compare them at a position. And Bucky Irving and Kyren Williams are very, very close.
Well, and I have them very, very close in rankings. I think, last year at this time, I didn't have the Rams as high because I had the same question about Kyren Williams. We wanted to see him prove it, do it for another year, and we'll see. And he came back and had better numbers. So, challenge answered for me.
Yep.
We have the same team at number 5, and that is the Green Bay Packers. They have Josh.
You want to hear something funny? So as I'm going through we're in an agreement a lot here on the NFC running back rooms. I spent most of my rankings just trying to figure out am I making them different than you just to be different? Or, what's the case here? Our top 5 are the same, and it's I don't know if our reasons are going to be the same, but I couldn't really make a case to put them in a different order just to be different from you.
Yeah, and I have reasons why I have them tiered the way that I do, but um, Packers on their roster, they have Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, who was a third round pick last year that basically redshirted with injury, Emmanuel Wilson, who was a free agent pickup in 23, Chris Brooks, who was a free agent pickup in 24, Amar Johnson, and Jalen White, who are college free agents from this 25 class. And I mentioned the Rams kind of started a tier of three teams for me that have an incredible lead back, and I may have some questions about the depth behind them. And I have them tiered based on how well I like their lead back. And I like Josh Jacobs more than Kyron Williams. I think Josh Jacobs fits exactly what Matt LaFleur has wanted to do with that Green Bay backfield for a long time. He finally got the horse that he wanted to run, and they made the most of it last year. He had a very impressive year, all 17 games, 29 yards, 15 touchdowns, caught 36 passes for 342 yards. I thought Emmanuel Wilson looked good during the times when he stepped in. It was a change of pace. Chris Brooks, the same. I still have high hopes for Marshawn Lloyd. A lot of people were very impressed with that as a landing spot for him. Didn't see anything as a rookie. I still think he could be a good number 2 there, but Jacobs is the reason that they're number 5 for me.
Yeah, it's I agree, and they feel good enough about their running back room and Marshawn Lloyd that they didn't go do anything in the draft or free agency. So, so they liked what they saw from Emmanuel Wilson. Chris Brooks, he spent a year or 2 years in Miami as the buried on the bench big back with all those other scat backs they have there. So they're comfortable. That I think they feel like if Josh Jacobs went down and Marshawn Lloyd falters, that they think they could get by with Wilson and Brooks. I think they like Marshawn Lloyd. I think they like the explosiveness he brings. He's not a real big back. He's one of those 5'9", 208 pounders, 210 pounders. But Josh Jacobs, I agree with you, man. He fits what they want to do, and they're playing with the passing game. They've got a strong tight end in Tucker Kraft. Luke Musgrave looked good before he got injured and then lost his job to Kraft. And it seems like they've got 4 or 5 wide receiver 2s, and in any given week, one of them will give you a wide receiver 1 week. But we'll see if Matthew Golden can step up and give them a true wide receiver 1. Is it going to be Jaden Reed or Romeo Dobbs? Seems to think he can do it, but they kind of don't think he can. That's the impression you get. So they're going to rely on Jacobs, and they're going to continue to pound him, and he's going to get volume. And at what is he? 5'11", 220. He's built to be able to withstand it pretty well. And he seems like, when you see him in interviews and stuff, he seems like just the nicest damn kid.
Yeah, 5'10", 223.
So, and he's a good all-around back. He runs hard. He's probably not going to get you a 90-yarder, but he's going to get you several of those 20-yarders.
So we have the same team at number 4 as well, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles. On their roster, a little-known quantity named Saquon Barkley. Then they picked up A.J. Dillon.
I'm hearing good things about him.
Yeah. They picked up A.J. Dillon as a free agent out of Green Bay. They have Will Shipley. They picked up Avery Williams as a free agent out of Atlanta. They have college free agents in Montrell Johnson Jr. and Shun Derek Powell, and they have Nicholas Liu. This is really, I'd be surprised if they keep more than 4. They may only keep 3. This is really about Barkley, which is the last and the best for me in this group of 3 teams where they have an incredible lead back and then some questions. A.J. Dillon going there, they may have the biggest quads in the NFL between him and Saquon Barkley. But A.J. Dillon has never really developed what we wanted to be. Matt LaFleur wanted him to be what Josh Jacobs is in Green Bay. He missed all of last year with an injury, questions about how severe the injury was and whether they really just wanted to move on, which they clearly did. Will Shipley is a nice special teams player, kind of a gadget guy. If they lost Saquon Barkley, I think this room would be demonstrably different. Saquon's good enough for me to put them at 4, but if he got hurt, I would have some worries.
Well, much like A.J. Dillon running the ball, signing him, I just don't see it. But, Dillon and Shipley are basically, if you were to split Barkley in half, that's what you would get. You'd get A.J. Dillon and you'd get Will Shipley. And I think they like Shipley in the Kenneth Gainwell role. He's a special teamer. One game last year when I think they had already clinched and Shipley played and he looked well. Shipley was a highly regarded recruit going into college. Early in his career, he was a Debbie Darling, but he just never got better. He was good to a point, and then throughout his college career, he just never took the next steps. He's a 4th round draft pick. We talk all the time. That's pretty good draft capital for a running back nowadays in the NFL. Unfortunately, he's behind Saquon Barkley. Avery Williams, if I had to guess, he's going to be the other back that makes the team because of special teams. But we'll see. They're gonna ride Saquon Barkley when they get up and they're just trying to kill time and they don't need something. They'll put A.J. Dillon in and they'll rotate Shipley in on passing downs and stuff. But it's the Saquon Barkley show. I think this offense would, if Saquon Barkley gets hurt, I think 2 things happen. I think we see more Jalen Hurts running, and I think we see the pass game tick up with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and how they may even discover Dallas Goedert again. It's wild the way they basically went into the whole offseason going, yeah, we're dumping this guy. Somebody come take him off our hands. And everybody basically said, oh, we'll just wait for you to cut him. And they're like, well, no, we're not going to cut him. You got to give us something for him. So not that they really had much behind him. Like Grant Calcaterra, nice story, retired because of concussions and then came back. Kylan Granson, he was a never was in Indianapolis. Harrison Bryant was a never was in Cleveland and Las Vegas. I don't know what their thinking was in this whole, we're going to get rid of Dallas Goedert. That just did not make any sense. So at least they came to their senses and kept him. But yeah, it's the Saquon Barkley show. And he is that good that he doesn't have much of an injury history. He had 1 year where he got dinged up, but what did he have, an ACL or what was it? Something he missed a good amount of time.
Yeah, he had 2 years where he missed quite a bit.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I mean,
it was earlier in his career.
Yeah.
So in his second year, I guess he was limited to 13 games. He missed 3 games. He missed 3 games in his 4th year, but he was only 2 games in his 3rd year. So really, I guess only 1 big injury year. Last year, it shows he only played 16 because that's because they sat him because they were doing so well. I think the same thing happened in 22 with the Giants. He only played 16 games because they were going to the playoffs and they rested him. So it's just amazing. In 6 years with New York, he had 5,211 rushing yards, pretty good. 1 year in Philadelphia, 2,005 yards already. So he may eclipse those stats here shortly. For the top 3, for me, it was each of these teams has a dynamic duo at running back, and I put them in the order based on how I feel about those duos. You and I have the Seahawks at number 3, and They're led by Kenneth Walker III, who was a second-round pick in 22. Zach Charbonnet there was a second-round pick in 23. They also have Kenny McIntosh, who was a seventh-round pick in 23. And they added a seventh-round pick this year in Damian Martinez. They also have George Holani and Jacardi Wright on there, but I think probably just those top four make it. But for me, it's really dynamic duo. I've talked before when we were talking about sleepers and guys we had hopes for, how much I'm looking forward to seeing Zach Charbonnet here in his third year. They were both pretty good when they were out there last year. You don't really miss a beat changing back and forth between them, either as pass receivers or as runners. They had very comparable stats, kind of based on the number of carries and their yardage, touchdowns, number of targets, and receptions. I think they're a great tag team duo. Kenny McIntosh was fine when he stepped in, but it's really about those top two for me. A great duo, not as good as the duos that I have above them.
Yeah, Walker is so explosive. I think he still leaves a lot on the field, trying to bounce it to the outside and hit home runs. But it's part of it is like, do you really fault him because he actually can do it? So you have to kind of take the good with the bad when it comes to that. Charbonnet doesn't quite have the same vision, doesn't quite have the same explosiveness, but he's a bigger back. He catches the ball well. I wouldn't say they're complementary backs. Either one of them could be lead backs on the team. I would expect that if they stay healthy, it's going to be mostly Kenny Walker this year. If he misses some time, I don't think they have any issue putting Zach Charbonnet out there and letting him take it. And McIntosh, when he was coming into the league, there was a lot of talk about, he's this great pass catching back. He's the best pass blocking back. He's a good runner. He was coming out of the storied program at Georgia. The reason he didn't get volume because Georgia didn't even give Nick Chubb and DeAndre Swift volume. And then he fell all the way to the seventh round. One of our writers over at Dynasty Nerds was down at the Senior Bowl and said that he frankly was kind of an entitled jerk when he met him, and he came into the league and as a seventh rounder and was just buried. Last year he finally started to show something. And so maybe it's, maybe he's gotten himself humbled a little bit. He's putting in the work. Damian Martinez, he's kind of a 2-down grinder back. And it feels like if Walker and Charbonnet were to go down, I think Martinez and McIntosh would be a serviceable duo in the backfield because of their complementary skill sets. That being said, who's it? Clint Kubiak's the new OC up there. So he's going to be looking, I think, to ride Kenneth Walker. Hope Walker doesn't strain an oblique as he's want to do. But if he does, I think he's going to be perfectly happy with Zach Charbonnet. I agree with you. They don't. I like him at 3. I'm not putting him over the next 2.
Yeah, and at number 2 is the Atlanta Falcons. They probably have who is our number 1 individual back in Bijan Robinson. And then Tyler Algier, a pretty great number 2, a guy who was a 1,000-yard rusher as a rookie before they drafted Bijan Robinson. He lost his job. Jace McClellan behind them, Carlos Washington Jr., Elijah Dotson, and college free agent Nathan Carter. I think they only kept 3 backs last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they only do 3 again. And you don't need more when you have this quality. Bijan Robinson last year, 17 games, 1456 in the yardage, 14 touchdowns, also got 61 passes. Tyler Algier got 137 carries, turned that into 644 yards. He's not as much of a receiver, not as dynamic a receiver, but a great set of running backs. I think Bijan probably gets the nod as an individual running back, but the strength of him and Algier to me was not quite as strong as the team I have at 1.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with Bijan and Tyler Algier. I think Jace McClellan is honestly an unknown at this point. So if Bijan was to get injured, I think they would lean into Tyler Algier. I don't know much about Carlos Washington or Elijah Dotson or
Yeah,
the other back
Jace McClellan was a 6th-round pick
out of Alabama.
last year out of Alabama. He had 13 carries for 32 yards.
Right. So, I was an Algier fan when he came out, though. There was a lot of talk about how fast he was going to run, and then he ran a 4.6. But he's a big back pounder. He's a capable receiver, not as fluid as Bijan in the receiving game, but I think he showed that he could handle the job as the number one back if you needed him to. But Bijan Robinson is Bijan Robinson, and I don't, if you have Bijan at number one, I don't know that there's a whole hell of a lot of argument I could make to tell you had to change it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably most people's number one ranked back in Dynasty, but it's very close to the number 2, which is Jahmyr Gibbs. And Gibbs powers our number 1 backfield, the Detroit Lions. They have Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds, Sione Vake, and then college free agents Keir Robichaux and Anthony Tyus III. I think Detroit was just going for some creative names this year in the draft and college free agents. Yeah, they certainly did. Reynolds is not a bad third back as a pounder. I think Sione Vake is more of a special teamer, but this is about Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, each of whom would be fine as the number 1 back leading a backfield on their own, but they're really dynamic as a duo, Sonic and Knuckles. They complement each other so well. They're both, I think Montgomery, a little bit of an underrated receiver, had 38 targets, caught 36 passes for 341. We always think of Gibbs as a receiver, and he is very explosive as a receiver, but Montgomery's not bad either. Montgomery, a very good running back. The two of them combined for 28 rushing touchdowns and almost 2,200 yards rushing last year. That is just a powerful tandem.
Yeah, Montgomery is, his high for catches in his second season. He had 54 catches in Chicago. He's always been a good pass receiver. The biggest knock on David Montgomery is he just doesn't have long speed. But he's one of those 15-yard guys. He'll turn a 2-yard run into a 6-yard run, and he'll turn a 6-yard run into a 12-yard run. Rarely is he going to turn a 15-yard run into a 50-yard run, but he's going to go ahead and make plays. He's going to do the right thing. Great pass blocker, good receiver, and by all appearances, an excellent teammate. There were in Gibbs's rookie season, which was Montgomery's first season in Detroit. There was a lot of talk that, they thought Montgomery being the lead back at that point, they would put Gibbs in, and a couple times they went to send Montgomery back in the game when they got down to the goal line, and Montgomery said, no, keep the kid in there. Let him go get his flowers. And so David Montgomery, I've been a fan since he came out of Iowa State. I think we're past the 1,000-yard seasons with him, especially being paired with Jahmyr Gibbs. But if he's going to get, 200 carries and catch, what did he catch last year? 36 passes. So, you'll take that in your RB2 on your team, and you'll definitely take that as your RB3 on your fantasy team.
Yeah, I mean, and he did that in 14 games. If he would have been healthy to finish, he might have gotten close to 1,000 yards on his own. So, just a dynamic duo. Hard to argue really with, if I think it's hard to argue with Atlanta or Detroit, either of them, just the strength of that duo. Seattle was good, but it was easy for me to put them third. I thought about it for a while, but I think that tandem in Detroit is just incredible, and hopefully will remain incredible for the foreseeable future. So we shall see. The That does it for our look at NFC running backs. We'll be back next week looking at the AFC running back rooms. Spoiler alert, they're mostly not as dynamic. Some of the AFC rooms give me some pause. But we will take a look at those going through, and then we'll start to turn our attention to pass catchers. Long holiday weekend. Maybe you have some time to kill. Maybe you have some lawns to mow as we begin summer. Dennis, what can the people do to fill that time?
Do what I do. Go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a follow, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff.
Indeed. Well, hope you guys have a wonderful holiday weekend. We will see you on the other side. Take it easy.